Before it's getting the results of this, did you have a theory going in on which group may or may not see the best improvement?
Well, a theory, yes, I would say. Very loosely based on my own experience of it. So obviously, I was expecting the no-hang protocol to give some sort of result. And I was expecting that if you don't train your fingers, you're probably not going to get way stronger fingers. So those were the main theories. And we decided to use the max hangs because it's sort of the golden standard in finger training for max hangs to get stronger fingers. Obviously, you can do stuff like repeaters and other exercises, but I would say generally max hangs is the one that people go to for improving their finger strength.
Right. And this was just to clear, I think that's an important point. This was a focus on improvement on finger strength, not on capacity, not on endurance, like critical force and these kinds of things.
Exactly. It was focused on improving your max strength. So we weren't looking at finger health in the same way because we couldn't retrospectively.
Right.
So yes, the strength component is what we were looking at, and we got some very interesting results.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just going to tease the audience further. Let's not get the results just yet. Let's string them along for another couple of minutes here because I'm enjoying this. I'm drunk with power over here. Keith, how about you? So Emil was thinking the group that just climbed and didn't log any sort of training would likely not see much improvement in overall finger strength. And the group that did the no hangs, he theorized based on his own experience, there would be an improvement there. Did you have a theory going in? Are you allowed to have a theory going in, or does that bias the study?
Well, absolutely you have a theory because that's what the hypothesis is, right? The hypothesis is just a fancy word for a guess as to what's going to happen. It's a guess that can be answered with a yes or no. So absolutely. And let's give it some background. I was a strength and conditioning coach with the University of Michigan football team. So, I knew a lot about kind of the max hang type of approach where you lift a heavy weight. The idea is that if you want to get stronger, the kind of the theory in the field is that if you want to get stronger, you have to lift a heavy weight. And the reason that you have to lift a heavy weight is because you're going to get a neural adaptation. So your brain is going to tell the right muscles to work and to work really, really hard for a period of time. And you are getting an increase in muscle mass. And so those two things are the things that are really going into these kind of maximum force type of movements. And there's also this specificity rule, which is that if you want to get better at something, you have to practice that thing exactly. So for a max hang, we're basically practicing what we're actually doing. So the test is max hangs, and one of the group is practicing at the test. And you should get better at the test if you practice the test. Whereas if you practice something that looks a little bit like it, but it's not the same force, it's not the same load, you wouldn't expect to see as big an improvement. So yeah, we definitely thought that there was going to be a stepwise, that one was going to be much better than the other.
I guess we've probably strung this out far enough. Let's figure out, let's learn from you what the results were, and then we can ask why.
Basically, we didn't see much of an improvement from the people who just climbed.
Okay.
That was essentially negligible. However, from the no hang as well as the max hang, we saw a very similar strength improvement from both of these separately if you do either the no hangs or the max hangs. I believe it was 2.5% increase for the no hangs and 3.2 for the max hangs, if I recall correctly. And
well, hold on. Let me pause you there for a second, because that just doesn't. That's surprising to that. Like, kind of defies common sense. So, and I don't know how rephrase that. How statistically significant that delta is between those, like 2.5 to like 3.25. I mean, it's more, right, to do the max hangs than the no hangs. But to Emil's point, they're pretty close, and one was like just lightly loading fingers, like with their feet on the ground, for 10 minutes a day. And another group was probably taking quite a bit of time to warm up and get ready and take caffeine and rip on that board as hard as they could. And ultimately the improvements between test A and test B were negligible. Keith, is that, or is it significant, the difference there?
So there was no statistical difference between those people who did the no hangs versus those people who did the max hangs.
Wow.
So they're statistically indistinguishable. The effect size, which kind of is a measure of taking into account the variability, the number of individuals. The effect size is about zero point 0.3, which is a moderate effect for the Abra-hangs, and about 0.45 for the max-hangs, which is still a moderate effect. So they're actually, and that's just because more people were doing the max-hangs. Mm-hmm. Because again, the people in the app who are going for finger strength, who are going to test multiple times, they're probably going to do a max hang much more than they're going to do an Abra-hang. So we had a lot more people in the max hang group. But that's why we get a little bit stronger effect size. But really, what it's telling us is that even though all of our kind of exercise physiology says that there's specificity, there's this neural component, there's this muscle component, all of those things are maximized by the max hangs, that there's not really a big difference between the two of them in this one measure that's actually very biased towards the max hang. So the max hangs themselves, the whole approach is actually biased to show that that's better. And what we show is that there's not really a statistical difference between the two types of loading. And so that's really interesting. And from my perspective as a physiologist, what it means is we'd always talked about there being a third component to strength. And that's what we call force transfer, the ability of me to take what the little proteins in my muscle are doing and transmit them to the bone so I can make them, so I can move, or so I can have that strength that I'm applying be transmitted so that I can actually produce movement, is actually truly a component of strength. Because what we're doing and what Emil has created in using these, max hangs, we call them the Abra-hang. So the no hang protocol. So right. In the Abra-hang protocol, basically what we're doing is we're focusing on force transfer. There's very little on the neural component because we're not really firing the muscle very hard. And there's very little on making the muscle bigger and stronger because we're not loading at a very high level. What we're doing is we're focusing on the connective tissue that's going to transmit that force. And so really what that's telling us is that we can do one thing, and the goal there is to improve force transfer. That's great. We do that. And then we can do the other thing, which is to improve the muscle and the nerves. Those both have about the same, maybe a little bit more in the muscle and nerve, but it's not really that as big of a difference as we thought it would be.
It's mind blowing to be like, it's like almost hard for me to kind of like reconcile in my brain right now that the improvement one would get from point A to point B in their max hang test is statistically the same if you're doing these Abra-hangs. I love that term. The Abra-hangs. I'm sure you don't, Emil, but it's great. It's good stuff. That's good marketing. Let's go with it. So I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around it, but I love it. And I want to dive more into that and what that could mean for us as we program our own training going forward. But there's a fourth group that we haven't even touched on yet, Emil. So I'll hand it back to you. And that was the group that was doing both, right?
Yes, Dr. Ryan. Here comes the cherry on top.
All right, y'all, just a quick second here to tell you about the sponsor of this video. I'm talking about Rungni. Holy smokes, I love Rungni so much. It's Magnus Mitbo's company. You all know Magnus. He's been on the show a million times here. Why do I love Rungni? Well, the stuff that they make is the highest quality. Mag Dust chalk, Mag Juice liquid chalk, all of their gear. It's just the best stuff I've ever used. I'm wearing like a head to toe right now Rungni gear. It's durable, it's lightweight, it stretches, it's comfortable, it performs at the best whether you're on rock or just going out for a beer, and their chalk is the best in the game. Plus, now they're offering a ton of free shipping bundles. So you can hit that link below and use code STRUGGLE to get 15% off store-wide, plus combine that with the free shipping bundles. Check it all out. Hit that link below. We'll get back to the video here.
Because we saw an additive effect of doing both, with an increasement of about 5.2% if you do both max hangs and the Abra-hangs.
Yes, there we go. So, and that's significant because that was, I don't know, is that 2x or something like that, Keith?
Yeah, it was basically, if you took the means of both of those groups and you added them up, you got almost exactly what you got when you did them together.
Wow.
And again, that really speaks to us to mechanism, that one is working on one thing, the max hangs is doing one thing, the Abra-hangs are doing something else. When you put them together, they add up to exactly what you'd expect given both individually. And so what it really tells us is that especially for strength, that working on these two separate things is going to have an additive effect. And so that's really good for us, because if your goal is to get stronger fingers and stronger grip, then we know that if you do two of these things, you're going to actually have an additive effect. If your goal is to improve health, well, we would hypothesize that one of those two mechanisms is going to be better than the other. So again, it then comes back to, as you're going forward as a climber, now what you can say is, look, one of the things that I've heard since I've started looking around in this area and reading more and more is what they always tell you is, if you're a beginner climber, well, you shouldn't do any hangboarding. You shouldn't do any finger-specific training early on. A lot of the reason that they tell you that is because the tissue is developing. And so if you're adding more load, you're going to have a greater likelihood of injury. Mm-hmm. Well, what this would suggest is if you add no hangs, which again have a very low risk of injury, very low risk of fatigue, that might be really, really suitable for people who are new to climbing. And then it goes back to something that Emil and I talked about when he came and visited me when I was in Maastricht, that the big effect that he saw is possibly because he's a boulderer more and he's doing much more dynamic work. And we do much more dynamic work, you're already getting a lot of the max hang type movement. You're doing a really forceful, really strong movement. You have to have muscle. You have to have the brain already working. Now, when you add the no hangs, now your effect size is going to be much bigger because you're adding it into something where you've already got that other load in there. And so some of those things start to really suggest, okay, so if you are a really dynamic climber who's taking lots of chances and going for really big moves, that's somebody who's actually going to benefit probably even more from doing something like a no hang, where it's going to be very slow, very low intensity, but a little bit longer duration holds that allow you to kind of fix any problems that you've developed within the tissues.
Hey, if you like this video, check out what I got going on over on Patreon. I've got over 100 hours of videos and bonus episodes with the absolute biggest names in rock climbing, from Adam Ondra to Magnus Mitbo, Alex Honnold, basically everybody under the sun. They're all right there, and you can watch them for free right now with a 7-day trial.